Syracuse legend joining us, and Jim, it's great to have you with us on our Final Four show. It's not the first time I've seen you walk through countless tunnels and hear from visiting fans.
All the time. If it wasn't, it means you're not good. If they don't boo you and yell at you, that means they don't, you don't beat them.
Right.
All right. First, how you doing? I mean, retirement. How long? What do we got? 3 weeks in?
No,
a month? What are we in?
Yeah, 4 weeks. I don't even know.
You pick up a hobby yet?
I've got lots of hobbies. Golf, fishing. I'm going to actually try to catch fish instead of just fishing. But, no, I'm getting ready to go to Prague, see my son play in Czech Republic. I've been to see Buddy play a couple times. I'm not thinking about transfer portal or NIL or anything. And it's a good time to be in that place because it's just such a scramble. And it's just so hard to figure out how to, you got to keep your players, but you're not sure if they're even going to stay. And then you can't go out and recruit somebody because you've got a player right there. And so it's a difficult time. But, I was ready, even with that. If I was 55 or whatever, I'd figure it out just like coaches will. They'll figure it out. But it's not, at this stage, it's not something I want to even try to figure out. And so I wanted to get this team in this year. We had some really good freshmen, and I think the program's in good position. Adrian Autry will be a really good coach. And so I just, after 60 years at Syracuse, I wanted to leave with at least some good players there. And they're there, and that's all you can do.
Hey, Coach, you said 4 weeks into retirement now. Have you had time to reflect on a great coaching career, and is there anything that really stands out outside of the national championship?
Yeah, the 6 overtime game, I'm glad the Connecticut people are here. If they'd have stayed there, I would have told them about it, but no.
They said that was the worst game ever.
Got it.
That's what they said.
They don't talk about it. They don't talk about that game.
Yeah.
All-time great game.
We do talk about it. Trust me. That's a game, if you're in it, you want to make sure you win it.
Yeah, you better win.
Because Jim hasn't talked to me about it since, or anybody else. But, I never look back. I always prided myself on looking forward, because if you don't, you're not going to win.
Sure.
So when it ended, I do. Now I think back on different things. I see fans all over that remind me of different games. All the great Georgetown great games we had, the games we had with Connecticut. We were lucky in the Big East. We had, at different times, Connecticut was really good. Georgetown was really good. St. John's was really good.
Really good.
Seton Hall had a run. Pittsburgh had a run. So, we had a lot of different teams that made a run, but we were always there. We were always pretty consistent. So it was a great experience. It was great. Everybody talks about the Big East. I mean, I was a Big East guy. That's where I was born, brought up with. The ACC was good for our school because of football.
Sure.
And you have to have that. But for me, the Big East...
You didn't want it, right?
The Big East was where I was comfortable, and that's what you want. But the ACC was good. It's a great basketball league. You can't measure leagues now like they're trying to, because we have 15 teams. So you can have 4 or 5 bad teams, and it drags the league down.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the league's bad.
Right.
It means that you got some bad teams at the bottom. One thing about the Big 12 and the Big East, they don't have a lot of teams, so and net doesn't drag people. And the net's not it's a horrible tool for measuring how good a team is. You have to remember, it's important to win in November, absolutely. But if you're losing 5 games in a row in the end of the year and you're losing by 15 or 20, you're not good.
Right.
So maybe you still take that team in the tournament, but you don't give them a good seed. And you don't, somebody like Connecticut that struggled for a little bit, you watch them at the end of the year, this is a really good team. So it's hard. You really have to have a basketball eye to see how good teams are. Sure. And I don't think people have that anymore. I think they go by numbers. That's hard to do.
how about your guy Rick Pitino?
Well, he'll
at
win.
St.
He'll
John's
win.
now. What do you, I mean?
He'll win in a year, maybe one.
I give it one.
It used to be, well, it used to be 3 or 4 years. Now it's like one.
With the portal.
Eddie will win at Georgetown, and Rick will win at St. I saw Shaka Smart the other day. I said, Shaka, just got a lot harder.
You think? Right?
Those guys are going to win. You know, they went in there. They're going to have NIL, and they're going to win games. That's what they do. You know, Rick's, if not the best, he's close to the best coach that I've ever seen, getting the most out of his team. The greatest story I have, the day after the press conference, my phone rang, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm just kind of getting up because I stay up late. I go, hello, and he goes, hey! And it's Lou Carnesecca calling me at 98 years old. I said, what do you think? What do you think? I said, well, I think you got the right coach. Yeah, we got the right coach. And I said, but I remember playing you and beating you in the LA Classic. And he goes, yeah, but we got you at St. John's. McIntyre stole the ball from you. He fouled you, but he stole the
98
ball.
years old, he remembers all
That
this.
was in 1966.
Come on. Are you kidding?
And,
That's
and
incredible.
I swear,
Are you kidding?
I remember it because I'm a nut for that stuff. And I was the player. He remembers it. He's 98.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
That was the highlight of my last month or so. Just crazy
great.
stuff.
What made you fall in love with coaching to begin with?
You know, when you play, you love to play. And I became a pretty good player, and I was playing the Eastern League, which people don't know about, but I was at Syracuse during the week, and I played on the weekend.
Sure.
So I assisted with the varsity, assisted with the freshmen. So, but I wanted to play, and then I had a chance to go to the Pistons, because I knew the coach coached me in the Eastern League, but I was already into coaching. So it was kind of then I said, because basically when you can't play anymore, you coach. That's what you do. You know, you either get out or you coach.
Right.
And I love basketball, always have. So all right, I'm going to coach. And it just worked out that I worked with a freshman varsity and then got the assistant job. This was 61 straight years that I've been at Syracuse. People think I didn't coach a year or two. I coach every year.
If I said to you, you can't coach, way back then, like there's just no way you could coach, what do you think you would have done?
Well, I did student teaching, and I hated it.
What'd you teach?
I taught 9th grade history in a city school, and it was a tough school. And I said, this is not for me. And my father was a funeral director, so I knew I wasn't going there. That was the family business.
Yeah.
So I said, I better get into this coaching thing. And I just kind of got in it, and things just worked, and I was lucky and got the job. And I tell all young coaches, you want to coach for a long time, get good players.
Yep.
And you
that
coach
helps.
for a long time.
That
Yeah.
helps.
So if I gave you the title of president, well, we'll call you czar, right? Basketball czar under new NCAA president Charlie Baker. What's the first? Give me what you're doing.
Well, the problem is you used to be able to have an answer for that when they didn't want it,
Right.
whether it was a three-point line, different thing.
Yeah.
Now we're in a situation impossible. There is no solution. There is no.
We're too
solution.
deep.
Well, Congress, the Supreme Court said you can't limit players, so you can't. The boosters are in, agents are in. You can't walk that back. Players, you know, it's great that players get money. My son made $100,000. I was happy for him, but he did it on his own. He worked. He did commercial. He did camp. He spoke. Did T-shirts, signed autographs. Now it's here's your money. You get, do a post, and here's your $200,000.
Sure.
And people aren't being transparent. We only know the number because of the couple of the cases that go public. Well, back in the old days when you found a school cheated on something and it was public, you knew everybody else in that area was doing it too.
Right.
So you know now that people are doing that. And it's all right, but I don't think that's the way it should be, but it's the way it is. And your school better get in the game. And, some schools talking about, well, we need to stop this. That is not stopping. You either get in the NIL
Or you're not getting players.
Or you're not getting players.
Today's episode of the Field of 68 After Dark is presented by our partners over at Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play college basketball pick'em, where you can win real cash prizes simply by picking player stats in this weekend's Final Four games. And pick'em, all you do is pick whether a player will go higher or lower on Underdog's projected totals, whether it's points or rebounds or assists or all of them combined. If you're like me and you think Adama Sanogo is going to go nuts this weekend, pick higher on his points projection, pick higher on his rebounds projection, maybe throw in a lower on Matt Bradley's scoring totals, a higher on Isaiah Wong, whatever it is that you like. Put them all together, and if you hit them all, then you can win as much as 20 times your money on a single game. Underdog's slick mobile app is easy enough that dummies like Jeff Goodman have even figured out how to use it. So go to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use the code FIELD, that's FIELD, to get a 100% deposit match up to $100.
We're not keeping players.
Right.
Because if you do have a good player and you don't get an NIL deal, he's going to go someplace else.
Sure.
And I don't blame the player. Now, what happens, though, a lot of times a guy's in a good situation, goes over there for an NIL deal, and it's not good. You look at, and I don't pick on anybody, but St. Bonaventure had a really good team.
Yeah.
4 guys left. One went to Alabama, played 2 minutes a game. A couple went to Iowa State.
They were okay.
Right.
They were actually pretty good.
They were okay.
Yeah.
And the other kid went to Florida.
Yeah. He was just okay.
And I know from the coach, the parents called after 8 games and said to the coach,
We screwed
what a
up.
mistake we made. Because if you're losing and it's not working out, that doesn't help your career. And let's don't forget, 1,600 people in the portal, 500 or 600 did not get a scholarship.
Right.
Now, the other half of that, 700 or 800, I haven't seen the whole study, but about half did worse where they transferred to than where they were.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, somebody should be doing studies of
I'm
this.
going to do it. I'm going to do it
Just
this
to
offseason.
Let people know.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I don't, I'm not this old coach that doesn't want kids. That's great. Get the money. The reality is in college sports, schools aren't making money.
Yeah.
The only thing they cite every time is coaches. We do. We make money. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But we're adults. These are kids. They're getting a $70,000 scholarship. They're also, like at our school, we give them the meals. So we give them all their meal money.
Pell Grant, right? Some of them.
$15,000 to $20,000. Now you get your NIL. But when it's a collective giving a kid the money to come there, then that's where we are.
Right.
And you just have to accept it.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. This is more on the personal front. I've met Buddy, I've met Jimmy, both phenomenal young men. I have a 7-year-old son. For guys, I would have done the exact same thing. I would have had both of my kids come and play with me just because that's what you live for, right?
Yeah.
What advice do you have for a guy who has 2 young children as things get busier and busier and busier? Do you have anything, simple thing, or is it a lot of things?
My wife pushed them more than I did.
Right.
But we gave them the hoop, Nerf balls early, and they were throwing them in. And then they started playing, get the small hoops. But all we did is made sure they had an AAU team to play for and get them there.
Right.
Make sure they got there. Drove them down to Albany because the City Rocks were the best team, 2.5 hours. I drove them down, every weekend this spring and got them to play. And I never thought they would be really good players.
Really good
I
players.
knew they had to grow, but my wife is 6 feet, so they had that chance.
Good job, Coach. Good job, Coach.
Yeah. He thinks that's the reason. It's not. But, and they just wanted it. I mean, I didn't push them. They just wanted it. And Buddy always worked harder on his shooting than Jimmy. And I told Jimmy Buddy would be a better shooter. and and Buddy's a better shooter. But Jimmy got bigger, so
Yeah.
he's 6'9". But they always I never thought they'd play. I didn't think Buddy would play till his junior year. We went to Peach Jam. He played Penny's team, and Jimmy made 8 threes. And Roy Williams was sitting right in front, and he looked at me and he said, "You better take him." And Patrick came over to me and said, "We're taking him." I said, "No, you're not."
Remember, I wrote a story on
Yeah.
Buddy at the Peach Jam.
Yeah.
It was the coolest thing ever because, like he said, he never thought Buddy was going to be good enough, certainly to play at Syracuse. And all of a sudden, he worked so hard, and he got there. Here's the best part ever was, do you remember this? Freshman year,
Yeah.
you're at BC. After the game, I asked him, I go, so how is it? How is it coaching Buddy? It's got to be the greatest thing ever. His response, I hate it.
Well, it's hard because you're coaching. Your purpose is to win the game. And
Sure.
But as a parent, the other half of your brain is going, make it, for the team, but also make it because he's your son.
Right.
Because you want your son to play. And his freshman year, he was shooting 17% through the non-conference game.
Yeah.
So he wasn't playing a lot. He was in and out. We had Tyus Battle, Frank Howard. But the first game I remember, it was either BC or Pittsburgh. We're playing at home. We're behind. They're zoning us. And I'm going to, but he hits 3 in a row.
Right.
And we go from down 6 to up 3. And the same thing happened the next game. And he just had a great year just making shots and got his percentage up to about 38%. And then after that, he became a good enough player to play
Right.
and not just shoot. But you're always worried about how your son's doing and
Right.
it's enough to worry about how your team is doing.
Right.
And also, I don't want to go home and look at my wife if my son is
Yeah.
That's the best
That's
part,
off. That's
right?
insult to.
You got to answer to the boss whenever
Julie,
you
hey,
what did he do wrong? I was like, I don't want that.
got to answer to the boss as soon as you get back.
That's
and Julie, hey,
Amazing.
listen, there's nobody as much shit as Jim gets, all right? And you do. You can be a little ornery at
Oh, yeah,
times.
no doubt, I do.
Your wife is like the nicest, and Buddy is the nicest. It's amazing
No, that's
They're-
the way they
they're
are. Sissy
related
and
to you.
Jimmy have a little of me in them, so they can get a little.
Jimmy's
on
got
edge.
more shit. Yeah.
But the whole thing about how, like, you answer this question at press conference. All right,
Yeah.
I do 60 press conferences a year. I
Right.
probably do once or twice. I'll say like, well, that's not a good question, and it'll come off like I rip some reporter.
Right.
I mean, I don't. That's
Hey, you got
that's a
me.
dumb
Hey,
question.
you got me years ago in Marquette. You remember? I was the second of 2. All right, I remember this. I was the second of 2. It was a Syracuse student, Michael Cohen, who's here, by the way, working with Fanta. He asked the first one, and the second one was about leadership and Michael Carter Williams, and that was the famous go get your Pulitzers somewhere else. And I'm sitting there going, holy shit.
that's a great
It was
line.
a great line. Listen, the best part, you called me the next day, you apologized, and
I'm surprised.
but I loved it because
someone else. You're surprised
You're surprised you apologize?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I did. All the Syracuse. Listen to this. This is a fact. You know how many Syracuse people are out here
Yeah.
in your world?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I know
everywhere,
everybody.
Jim.
Westwood one. There's
Coach.
5 of them over there.
Right.
They all come to me and say, "You know what, Coach? I learned more from you than all my teachers because I knew I had to be prepared. I knew I had to be ready, and I had to go and be on target." And that's not a bad thing to learn in college.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I was a little over the top, but you lose a 1-point game. You think it's just like, I'll be nice. It's hard.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hard. And when somebody says, well, your zone wasn't good, why didn't you play man-to-man?
Oh my God, that happened
Well,
down at Clemson. I
we
remember
don't play
that.
man-to-man.
remember
So
that?
what am I supposed to do?
Right.
I remember that happening. I was like, oh
You
no.
go ask Tony Bennett when they lose,
Right.
Tony, why didn't you play zone? No, you don't, because he's a man-to-man coach.
Right.
But So some things bother you more than others, but I got a little
Do you have
mellower.
any regrets?
No.
Do you have any regrets? Zero.
Zero.
Zero regrets. Not one thing that you say like, oh man, I have plenty. Listen, I have plenty.
You
How
know,
I
mean, I tell the truth.
I know you do.
And
I know you
You're
do.
going to
Yeah.
get in trouble telling the
Yep.
truth. I said Miami bought their team. I should have said they just did great NIL work. So our phrase was wrong.
Yep.
But they did NIL, got them here.
Right.
Fact.
Fact.
Absolutely.
And NIL helped other teams.
Sure.
Period. And I should have just left it at that. But so sometimes you say one word you shouldn't. But it's like two people, 10 coaches called me and said, well, you told the truth.
Right.